We're just going to start with a few announcements real quickly. If you didn't hear them already, so we were discussing what we had to say. Basically, please look at our website, which is updated regularly. And then also for all our classes, every single day we have classes. I'm trying to improvise over here, right? Robin Williams, you know? Okay,
ladies and gentlemen, that's a professional choreographer.
Also on the 17th, on the 17th of this month, we have our first lounge night with NCSY, a Wednesday night, so I forget about that. And we just had the powwow with the powers that be with the regional NCSY, and we are slated, the Midwest Tourist Center is slated to join NCSY for their junior regional Shabbaton in South Bend. Okay? Well, we don't know yet. We just have a commitment. It's my job to figure out when it's going to be. So we're looking at January. We're talking like 160 kids from across the Midwest. Wow. And the Tourist Center, God willing, will be shut down that week, and we will be in the hotel. Start saving your pennies. Okay, here we go.
Oh, I see your smile.
You don't know what I'm smiling about.
Okay.
Hotels. I know
This is going to be a retreat for the Tourist Center. Downtown South Bend. We're the mayor's office. High fly. Okay, that's okay. So now, those are our announcements. Anything else? All right. This lecture tonight, don't forget the camera. No. The video camera. It's being moved right now. Okay. Now you can edit that part out. Okay. So this lecture tonight, I don't know about you guys, but I was at Shepherd Buffalo's a few weeks ago when Jim Goodkin was sitting across from me, and he says, he gets this alert in his phone, says, Robin Williams just committed suicide. I said, get out. Don't even talk about that. I can't believe it, right? So I didn't believe it until I heard it in the news the next day. I refused to believe it. So it's kind of like the shuttle disaster to me. And this lecture really is kind of like my therapy. So I'm getting it out right now. And I kind of thought that Robin Williams is to my generation like the previous generation that John Lennon was to them. So I kind of figure, you know, when he was assassinated, kind of the same thing with me. That's how I feel. So I mourn the loss. Because I tell you the truth, I was actually looking forward to growing old with Robin Williams, because we had a taste of his oldness and his grandfatherliness in Night at the Museum, right? So he was like grandfather to the night security men. And it was funny. I was waiting for that. And now we don't get that opportunity. But let's try to understand about his death. Let's try and compare it, or at least understand it, with King Saul. With King Saul. And let's try and figure out what the lessons are for us today from these disasters and these tragedies. So first I want to start with King Saul. And I want to do about a 10-minute bio. And we're going to try to understand King Saul. Then we'll go to Robin Williams, do a short bio, and give me a great excuse to buy this magazine. Thank you for letting me have a lecture. Right? And then we're going to try and figure out what was going on in their lives and how they came to certain ends. And then we're going to figure out what the lessons are for us. That's where the order of the speech tonight. King Saul. He was perfect. No skeletons in the closet. It said in the Tanakh that he was like a 1-year-old when he assumed his command, became king. What does that mean? He was a 1-year-old. He was like a 1-year-old. He had no sin. He was perfect. He was tall. Taller than everybody else, like by a head. So you're talking about 6.5 feet tall this guy was. Well, he was tall, he was strong, he was handsome, and most of all, he was not overbearing. He was very, very humble. Everybody loved King Saul. So humble that when he was anointed, he didn't tell anybody. He hid away from the limelight until he was forced into the limelight, and he was just grand and very unassuming. So when it came time for him to assume his command, the whole purpose why they needed a king at that time was because surrounding enemies, nothing has changed. All the nations around Israel hate Israel and want to see Israel destroyed completely, utterly. There's no peace here. And they were constantly attacking the Jewish people in Israel. So, the Jewish people asked for a king. We want a king to lead us against our enemies. So Saul was chosen by God from the tribe of Benjamin. And when it was time to gather the people together, not everybody wanted to follow him. Some people jeered. Who is this guy? Who is this? We don't know him. It's like getting somebody in and become president of the United States who had no experience in politics whatsoever. It doesn't work. So, because they had no experience, who is this guy? So, therefore, he was jeered at. And so jeered at, he was self-conscious. He didn't want to take the position. Until God actually gave him a Ruach Elohim, the Pasuk says. He gave him a little extra boost with his own spirit so he would have the demeanor and the self-confidence to approach the people and stand up in front of them and act like a king. The only problem is that people, when they jeered at him, he didn't do anything about it. That was his very first mistake. When you're a king, you cannot let anyone put a slight on your honor. I've been reading a little bit of American history lately, surprise, surprise. So I was reading about Andrew Jackson. Andrew Jackson, this guy was tough as nails. He's the guy who, when he was basically running a militia against the Indians in the South, he helped take Texas a little bit. Eventually he overran Florida without Congress's permission to get the Spanish out of Florida to get that. He had one time, it got to a point when they had massacred so many Indians that his militia said, enough is enough. We're set for 90 days. It's been a year. We're ready to go. So what did Jackson say as he was mounted on his horse? He said, see that imaginary line? You cross it, you're dead. Nobody crossed it at first, but eventually someone did, and guess what? He was dead. Nobody crossed the line again. That's what a king has to do in order to keep the people in place. Saul didn't do that right away. Then, because of his timidity and his lack of experience and his humility, basically, he also made mistakes in judgment and in battle. He told the people, we're going to be so righteous that we are going to not eat this whole day while we battle the Philistines. As we ran out of whatever nation it was at the time, not the Philistines yet, running after them. We're going to run after them, and we're going to conquer them, but we're not going to eat. If anyone eats, you're a dead man. Well, that was a mistake because the guys got too tired. They couldn't eat anything, they lost all their energy. And he made a mistake in judgment there as well. And I think what was happening was that, again, he didn't know how to balance the extremes. How do you do it? I don't know what I'm doing. I'm a humble person. Don't get me wrong. Saul HaMelech was a complete tzaddik. God chose him to be the king. I don't want to slight his honor at all. Just trying to put the simple verses in place so we can understand what happened here. However, even though he wasn't as great at first, he did solidify the troops enough so they could defeat their enemies. Okay, enough, and now it gets a little better. So eventually, once we had actually this last week's Parshas Kitzei, it says that once you have a respite from all your enemies around you, all your enemies are at peace with you, at least a cold peace for case they're not attacking you, then you have a mitzvah to go out and get Amalek. So the prophet at the time was Samuel. He said, go get Amalek. Destroy every man, woman, children, all their cattle, no booty, no nothing. Wipe them off the face of the planet. That's their punishment because they attacked the Jewish people in the desert. And God has an eternal warrant on their head, basically, or bounty on their head. Go get all of them. You should have no memory of them. So, what did Saul do? He went and he killed the men, women, children. But he kept the king of God, and he kept the best of the cattle and the sheep. Why? Some say because he was ashamed, he just let them all go to waste. And a God, you can now parade around and say, we beat you and humiliate him. That's what kings did. You humiliate a person, then you kill him. Right? But Samuel came along and said, you didn't listen to God. And Saul said, what are you talking about? That's exactly what he told me to do. And so Shmuel says, what's the sheep I hear? What's the bleating I hear in the background? Wow! So he started making excuses. Right? Some say he never had this intention, but he just made up on the spot. That, we are going to sacrifice them. They're the best of the sheep, we're going to sacrifice them to Hashem. Right? And what about a God? Oh, we'll kill him too, we're getting to it. right? And Samuel said, no. What do you think God wants? God doesn't want your sacrifices. He wants perfect obedience. And that is the job of the king. And that really blew it for Saul. His reign was over. He wasn't listening to God. Oh, I even missed the first time actually. When he first was anointed king, he was told to wait. This is very important. I forgot. I'm sorry. He was told to wait for Shmuel. A little happened. Samuel says, "You're the king now. So I'm going to come back in 7 days, and we're going to sacrifice some animals. Right? We're going to bring the people together to solidify your reign." And so 7 days are up, and Samuel's nowhere to be found. And the people start getting antsy. Sound familiar? All right, Mount Sinai, 40 days, golden calf. Very similar. They get antsy. They start walking away. And Saul got nervous. And so he started doing the sacrifices before Samuel came. So this is the very beginning of his reign. And what did he do wrong? Because Samuel thought I want 7 full days. And then he only had 7 partial days. The first day he counted, right? The first day when Samuel left, they counted that first day as a day. The people did. Samuel didn't count until the next day. So he should have 7 full days. Just a few hours late, just like Moses. Same exact thing. So that's the first time he made a mistake. He listened to the people and didn't listen to God. And this keeps going on and on. He keeps listening to the people. That's his humility. He could never bring that kingship and combine the two and make them work together. As opposed to, let's say, King David. King David was also very humble and very honorable, but what he understood was that my job is to get the people to follow God, period. And whatever that takes, I will do. When it comes to my honor, I'm not worried. God's honor, I'll do whatever I have to do. So Saul has now been told by Samuel, once he doesn't destroy Amalek completely, that you're out. Your kingship will go away from you and you've lost it, period. And there's nothing you can do about it. So what happens? The verse says that a raw Me'es Hashem, this like evil spirit came into him, came from Hashem. I call it depression. Depression? Well, why not get depressed, right? Here he had a chance to reign, perhaps have all his kids reign after him, and his grandchildren, and forever and ever, and he blew it. So he got depressed. So he got someone to play music for him. And who was that? Anybody know? David, right? He was a shepherd at the time. And little did Saul know that he was already anointed by Samuel to be the next king. But he was playing music for him and he was pacified by it. But as time went on, David got greater and greater. And it started with the story of David and Goliath. Here's this little guy, we'll cut to the chase, because a lot of us know the basics of it. None of the soldiers would stand up to this giant of a man. Who knows who it was? How tall was he?
12 feet. 8 feet?
Amas or feet?
No, I was
For being small.
8 feet.
12 feet, 8 feet. He was really big. And he had the body to match it. Okay? So, and he was scoffing of the God of the Jews. Right to their face, the warrior's face. I challenge anyone to fight me. You kill me, you win. I don't kill you, I win. And you guys are toast. No one would fight him. David comes along after a command of his dad, so go take some food and provisions to your brothers on the war front and see what's going on and report back to me. And he goes up there, he's a young guy, a really young guy. And he goes up there and he hears Goliath throwing out these curses almost to Jewish people and belittling Hashem. And he says, whoa, time out. What's going on? What is this? You have the audacity to come against my God, and what are you warriors here? None of you are standing for Hashem's honor? This is not okay. He says, I will fight. I will fight. Of course, everyone ridiculed him. What are you little pisher? Right? We can't do this. He couldn't carry carry King Saul's shield. He was too small for it. He couldn't fit the armor. So he picked up 3 stones. He hit Goliath in 3 spots, representing 3 different things. And even when he got up there, Goliath actually ridiculed him. You're gonna fight me? And he said, you come with the spirit of human beings. I come with the God of Israel. And with that, he let the first rock go, pegged him in the forehead, right between the eyes, down Goliath went, chopped off his head. David wins, gets Saul's daughter, everything's good to go. So now his reputation starts to grow. And Saul was okay with this. And he's okay with David, but the problem is that David now becomes a warrior and becomes more successful all the time until the chant was, oh, it's, the 1,000 have fallen by Saul, but 10,000 by David. And really it was supposed to be an honor for Saul because he had this great warrior, but he said, David's greater than me. And then he realized what was going on here, got jealous, more jealous, started to realize that he was actually anointed king already. He's going to be the next king. And the jealousy was so great, the music wasn't pacifying anymore. Saul wanted to kill David. I mean, it's unbelievable. Here's the king, here's the guy who's obviously so righteous, he's doing so many miracles, and the king, who's supposed to be really the agent of God, wants to kill this kid for doing such great things. Who's obviously an agent of God, and who's anointed by God too. This is what the jealousy happened. The anxiety. Saul knew that his days were numbered. He became anxious about it. He was depressed. He was in conflict with himself. What do I do? And he's constantly, there's so many stories that go back and forth. He's in conflict. And so he wanted to kill David. And he pursued him with the whole entire army. Many times. I mean, and even then, Saul, I think he got really confused. He got bad information from his general, and he went and even killed an entire city of Kohanim. You're a Kohanim. He killed those 85 Kohanim with their women, with some wives and children. Wiped them out. I mean, this is a confused person. And this is where Reish Lakish in the Gemara says that a person who deals with people compassionately when they should be cruel, such as an Amalek, he was compassionate to Amalek when he should have been cruel and wiped them all out, he will eventually treat someone cruelly whom he should be compassionate to. That's what happened with Saul. It was messed up, and it got worse and worse, until finally he actually, necromancy? No, I don't know. He eventually went to a medium, and he called the spirit of Samuel, because he was so lost to the Spirit of God that God wasn't talking to him through dreams. He wasn't talking to him through the Urim and Tumim, the breastplate of the Kohen, the Kohen Gadol. There was no prophets who would talk to him anymore. He was totally lost. He went into despair. He was worried now. What's going on? He went to a medium to call Samuel up from the grave because he died in these 2 years he was reigning. What's going on? And Samuel, with his wonderful consolation, said, don't worry, you and your sons will be with me tomorrow. I mean, you're dead. You're going to go fight the Philistines again, and you're dead. And that's what happened. Saul committed suicide. At least he started the process. Because he realized he was outnumbered, he was outgunned, he was cornered, and he said, instead of being ridiculed, the king of Israel should not be ridiculed, therefore I will take my life, which is permissible, according to halacha. So, that's a short bio of Saul. Keep that in the back of your head. Now, Robin Williams. A little closer to home. I didn't know much about Robin Williams, except for a few of the movies I've seen and the TV shows, or... Oh, Shazbot. I forgot. No, I just want to say Shazbot. It's one thing to curse in another language. You know, another race's or another being's language. Kind of fun. Okay, so, Robin Williams, I didn't know much about him. So, he was a great, great guy. Everybody loved Robin Williams. He was kind, he was humble, he was the best at his craft. Par excellence, and nobody denied it. He would go into regular comic clubs in his hometown, just walk in. He would give encouragement to the guys. He'd go on stage, do a little routine, so he kept sharp for a live crowd. And he'd go back and he'd give more encouragement. He would talk to people, he'd ride his bike. We had a family here just over the weekend for the Bris. They're from north of San Francisco. I said, hey, that's Robin Williams' town. He said, yeah, he used to ride his bike around our town. You know, just this real, regular guy. Everybody loved him. And he loved everybody else, it seemed like. He was giving. He did his USO tours. You know, they were all gratis. He had foundations. Christopher Reeve had his foundation. He was the president of the foundation for him. A very close friend of Christopher Reeve and trying to run his money. Very generous with his money. Generous with his time, with his support. Just an all-around great, great guy. That's what I learned from Time Magazine. But there's some other things I learned from this Time Magazine articles. And it's shocking. First of all, I mean, we look at Robin Williams and say, well, he was married, okay, a few times, but he had a family, he's got money, he's got fame, he seems like he's got everything. But he obviously didn't have everything. It seems that, let me just read you this paragraph here, about performers in general. Performers in general. Is there something in the brain chemistry of the actor performer that produces this woeful result? It's normal, right? I'm still mad at John Belushi and
Freddie Prinze?
no, what's that for the movie? Everything over the rainbow. What's her name? Judy Garland, right? I'm still mad at both of them, right? Kind of a funny combination, but those two I'm still mad at for their OD. Okay, I'm not interested. I'm really upset about that. But it seems normal that these performers, they get this woeful result. I could fill this page and another with the names of famous and less so actors, comics and musicians who live miserably and die in association with that demon of a hound. And booze is the favored self-treatment. Not surprising, because you will feel a little better for a bit, but it's a costly temporary reprieve, since alcohol is a depressant of the central nervous system. So it's a cycle. They're not happy, and therefore they drink, and that makes you more not happy, even though it helps for a little bit, right? So it happens all the time. And listen to this. This was shocking. And Robin also knew this. And he was a few years ago, he's this person who's Dick Cavett, who's writing this article. A few years ago in a small club, he came off stage after bringing a cheering audience to its feet. And Robin says the following: "It's funny how I can bring great happiness to all these people, but not to myself." He realized it years before this. He was never happy. Shocking. Why is that? Why would a person not be happy? Well, one could say, not only that, this one was really shocking. He was 63 when he died, and basically this is written by, this one article is written by, this is a long article. Nevertheless, it was talked about a couple of years ago again, that, so he looked so exhausted, during a break on a shoot, says someone who worked with him, Robin sat off to the side, and in that moment, his face just changed. He looked so exhausted and profoundly, deeply sad. And then 1 minute later, it was gone. He just snapped out of it and pulled himself back together. And you know what? He nailed the scene. He was right back in the mode. But I said to him afterward, "Hey, are you okay?" And he said something like, "It's no fun getting old. And I'm so expletive old." Okay? That's what he felt. But he said it in one of his funny voices like it was a joke. But he meant it. He felt old. He's only 63. He's obviously plenty of energy. What was he so sad about? And then we learned something really new about Robin Williams. Comedians, whether or not they become movie stars, are also actors. They play characters that must be commanding or charming enough to win laughs and love. Offstage, they can be quiet or morose. And that could be Williams. If you were alone with Robin, says Muda, it was a writer, it was Bob Muda. If you were alone with Robin, says Muda, and I've known this guy for 35 years, he would be so uncomfortable. It would be like being in an elevator with a stranger. But if there were two people in the room, then he would snap into performing. I think it was a guy who had a very difficult time when he was alone. Trying to put a little picture here together. I learned more from these articles, and I started to understand Shaw at the same time. So then, let's talk about what he did. So here, Robin, like his idol Jonathan Winters, must have had one of the world's hardest talents with which to live and retain personal balance. Sitting next to him on my old PBS show was like sitting in the Macy's barge next to the fireworks going off. He was at full manic comic frenzy for an hour without let-up. We even improvised a short Shakespeare play together, with and without rhyme couplets. You could do anything you wanted. I caught his manic energy. It was exhilarating and exhausting. When it ended, I was spent. It took him a while to come down, at least partially down, and I thought, can this be good for anyone? Can you be able to do all these rapid-fire personality changes and emerge knowing who you yourself are? Who you yourself are. That's what it says. Right? Can you know who you are when you're doing all these rapid-fire changes? All right. Then I started to come to a realization. After I read this put together, read King Saul, and I think what they struggled from was that they could never be themselves. And perhaps they didn't even know who they were, and they got confused. If you look at King Saul, he never wanted the limelight. You want to know how he became king? Let me tell you the story. So he was a shepherd, like most of the great people in Tanakh. And his dad said, you know what, we lost the sheep. Go find the sheep. Right? So he went to go look for the sheep with a servant of theirs, and it took him a few days. They're looking for the sheep, can't find the sheep. So King Saul says, you know what, we got to get back to Dad. He's going to start worrying about us. Which the commentators say that since he cared, he equated himself with a servant. He didn't think himself higher. That's how humble he was. And so the servant said, well, let's go to the prophet. That's what everyone does. Back then, prophets were your forecasters, weather forecasters. They helped you find things. If you had ache or pain, they were your doctors. What did I do wrong? So I can correct my behavior, so I can fix my body. So the servant said, let's go to Shmuel, Samuel, the greatest prophet there was of the day, basically, to go figure out where the sheep are. So they went to Samuel, and before he even had a chance to ask him, yo, Mr. Prophet, where are my dad's sheep? Before he had a chance to even say that, ask that, Samuel said, don't worry, your sheep are fine. And by the way, you're the next king. Like out of the blue. He had no time to prepare, like we said before. He was totally taken off guard. He didn't want it. He was a humble guy. That's all he wanted. So to have this slammed into him, he couldn't assimilate it into his being, into his psyche. So then, once he finally understood he was king, he just lost sight of who he was. And so he started making orders. And the orders didn't necessarily make sense. Because they weren't from him. They were just from some outside source that he thought was perhaps the right thing to do, but it wasn't from his very essence and his being of what he knew was right or wrong. Just made orders. And that confused him. Since he didn't know who he was, therefore he did things that were just totally off the wall. Kill an entire city of Kohanim? It's radical. But because he was compassionate, he was supposed to be cruel, so therefore he's cruel, he's supposed to be compassionate, he didn't know who he was anymore. That's what I'm thinking. He lost himself. And since he lost himself, he had no longer a focus or a basis, a foundation from where he could make decisions. He was going off the fly. And therefore he was confused. And it confused his mind. He became depressed, he became anxious. He became, not manic, but totally obsessed with killing David, no matter what. And eventually it was his demise altogether. That's why it's King Saul. Robin Williams, I think, suffered from the same thing. We saw it in here. I didn't make this up. They said in here, how can a person who has these split-second changes of personality know who he is when he's done? I think Robin didn't know really who he was supposed to be. He was always being something else, or another personality for other people. Always for them and nothing for himself. How can I make everyone else so happy, but not make myself happy? Because he didn't know who he was. Even though he was great, and he was awesome. I'm trying to be a psychiatrist, I'm not a psychiatrist. I couldn't fix the man. It's not I don't know how for that. Right? And obviously nobody could. But he didn't have a foundation of who he was. And therefore he got lost until he couldn't manage the pain anymore. That's what I think. He even talks about in the article here, there are plenty of people who have depression who don't kill themselves. There are plenty of people who live and are surviving through Parkinson's. They don't kill themselves. 10 million people with Parkinson's. They don't kill themselves. Why did he kill himself with his onset Parkinson's? Why did it bother him so much? I think because he didn't know who he was. Now, what are the lessons for us? That's my background. That's my understanding of this whole thing. What do I mean by this? How do we find who we are? I'm going to tell you a personal story. I'm about Tshuva. Everyone knows that already. I got some quirks. You don't get these quirks from just nowhere. So, I I went to yeshiva for 4 years in Skokie Yeshiva in Skokie, Illinois. Then I went to Israel, to Torah Or. Torah Or is in a very, very religious area of Jerusalem. And I tried to fit the part. Black hat, jacket all the time. I was a real greaser. I came home in the summer, and I was a greaser. And I was home for 4 weeks in Marengo, Illinois, in my parents' house. Went to Chicago for Shabbos. And when I left, we all knew it was the most miserable 4 weeks of our lives. So, I had no idea why. But the moment I got back to Israel, I was in the taxi, and I got out of the taxi in front of Torah Or. This was my very first thought. I remember clear as day. I looked at Torah Or and I said, Torah Or, I love you. I said, Majesdorf, I hate this place. It wasn't for me. And I realized at that moment that for 18 years, actually longer than that, I was Kenny. And now all of a sudden I became couple. And I wanted to leave Kenny behind. Well, no, but Kenny was in the music program in high school. It was very important to him. Right? He was on stage in grade school. Right? He had other interests outside of school. I realized then and there that I had to assimilate my old self, pre-Baal Tshuva days, into my Baal Tshuva days. And make myself whole. And I started to build a new foundation. It worked so well that after the next summer I came home, my brother and I have an interesting relationship, as most siblings do. And he pulled me aside before I went away for yeshiva again, in the back to school yeshiva. And he said, I just want you to know, I was ready for you this year. I was ready. But you were a pleasure to have at home. Really glad you were here. It's because I figured out who I was. I was able to assimilate both worlds and work it out. That's what I mean. Give you another example. When we first started the Torah Center, Rhodes and I were here. He told me, couple, not couple again, remember, not couple. Okay, couple.
Are you sure?
You're Kenny. You're couple. I'm somebody. So, he said, couple, if you're going to do something, if you're going to give a class, if you're going to teach, whatever you're going to do, teach what you love. If you're going to learn what you love. Because if you do what you love, then you'll be great at it. And you'll work ever harder at it. That was one piece of advice. And the other piece of advice I got when I was in Israel, it was during a regular Parsha class, basically. And there's one little, you get these pearls every now and then, they never leave you. And so Rabbi Yosef Stern said in this Friday morning Parsha class, he said, you always know what you have to work on, especially when it comes to Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, to change yourself when it's the hardest thing for you to do. If you've got some sort of mitzvah that you have a really hard time doing, whether it's by will or you just don't do it, you refuse to do it, it's too hard for you, guess what? That's your purpose in life. Because God didn't put you on this planet to make it easy for you. He wanted you to work hard. 2 bits of knowledge now to help me find who I am. 1, find what you love and focus on it. Number 2, when it comes to spirituality, anything that's really difficult and you want to succeed at it, you're going to have to work really hard at it. That's your job in the world. So what I tried to do, and the Torah Center has helped me tremendously, Mary Rhodes helped me tremendously in having to be able to actualize my growth through the Torah Center. I created a class, or was willing to create a class, or was willing to come to it. It was called Customize Your Judaism. Right? I remember the first flyer had Customize Your Judaism. Boy, did I get slack for that one. Ooh, flack for that one. Right? Customize your Judaism, what do I mean? I meant that find what's right for you and focus on that so you get real enjoyment from your Judaism. And the stuff that's hard, let's try and find an easier way to assimilate the English, because all mitzvahs are important. We have to do all the mitzvahs. How can we assimilate those mitzvahs, because there are lots of different opinions out there, to make it work for you? Right? Prayer can be different for people, but there are different ways to approach it. I helped one person in the shul once. He said, gosh, I really don't enjoy filming shul. And I said, I know what your problem is, because you feel like you have to be here, I think maybe it was an elbow when I was looking sure, but you feel like you have to come here on time, and you daven faster, and you're sitting in the front. What are you doing to yourself? I said, come whenever you need to get through your tefillah. Sit in the back. Don't worry about the rest of us. Just make sure you hit Shmona Esrei the Amida with the group. That's all you need to do. That's the most important thing. He came to me a month later. He said, I'm so much happier. That's what I mean. Know yourself. We have to know that we are not perfect. We can't be everything to everybody. Shaul was king. He was trying to be everything to everybody. But he was too humble for that. Perhaps Robin Williams felt the same way. I don't have near as good a record with Robin Williams as I do with King Saul. But perhaps he felt, I have to be for everybody else, but I can't be for me. And therefore, he didn't know who he was. He lost himself. He had no self-confidence. So, with that, that's what I got out of my research. Was that in order to really be happy, and to get rid of these mild demons at least, as long as we're not clinically diagnosed, right? For our little everyday demons, we just have to know who we are. Focus on our strengths, because that'll make us so happy. And when it comes to our weaknesses, understand that we're weak. Oh, I'll tell you one more nugget. This came from Chaim Dovaltuski. That was Rav Steinberg's son-in-law. And he told me one thing my first year in yeshiva, and he said, you know what? And I'm taking it a little out of context, but the meaning's right. He says, you can't expect a son of an axe murderer to be the Gadol Hador, to be the greatest man of the generation. Perhaps his job in this world, his spiritual job, is just not to be an axe murderer like his dad. That would be an accomplishment. We don't know what our accomplishments are supposed to be, but that's what he told me. Now we're not talking about a small person here. We're talking about a person who's respected out the entire Torah world. He wrote many, many commentaries on the Talmud. Smart guy, really knows him, very religious. And he's saying, I don't expect this guy to be Shomer Shabbos even. Maybe he's not supposed to be an axe murderer. But we have to be honest with ourselves, understand our weaknesses, and do the best we can. And be happy with that attainment. And then once we attain that, guess what? Then, what was that book?
Take it up a notch.
We take it up a notch. Right? What's that? There was, I forgot, there was a level. You hit that level, Glenn Beck book.
Peter Principle?
I forget. Once you hit that notch, you hit that level, then you can just move a little more if you wanted to. Overton window. There's an Overton level that people are getting acclimated to a certain level of this is how life should be like. Judaism says, no, you can take it a little notch higher. God doesn't expect you to take it a mile. Just a little bit more. But we have to be honest with ourselves. And when, again, 3 processes here. When I understand what my strengths are and I can focus on them, I can be very happy with that part of my Judaism. When I understand that I'm not perfect, and I'm lacking something, I don't expect to be perfect. I'm expected to be the best me I can be. And as long as I'm growing and I'm honest with myself when I look at myself in the mirror in the morning, I should be happy about that. Because God's probably happy with that, I hope. Only you, and it's between you and God. I don't know. And then, once you do hit a certain level, if we can turn it just one little more notch, little by little, inch by inch, we can do better and better. And certainly God will be happier with us all the time. And I think that could take us out of our doldrums. It can give us fulfillment in our religion, in our day-to-day life, in our work life, in our family life, in our play life, vacation life, whatever the case may be. Focus on these 3 things. I think we can get rid of our depressions, our little stress, and we can have a real simchas l'chaim. Right? Doctor's out. Okay, dessert. Oh, question.
I'm confused what you said about the committing suicide card. That you said that it was permitted. And I've always been like on the defending Judaism that it's not permitted.
Well, think about, in Gittin, it talks about the story of the children who jumped off the boat when they were being taken to Rome. They knew they would be sold as slaves, and knew what would happen, they'd be defiled. And therefore it was permitted not to be defiled, actually to jump into the sea and kill themselves. What?
Yeah.
Correct, same idea.
It's only extreme circumstances.
Oh, correct. Now, again, don't forget, someone who has mental
King
illness,
Saul was under extreme circumstances.
because he was a king.
The lack of sanctity for the king of Israel, that the king of Israel should be humiliated, that would have been a Chil Hashem. That would have been anticipation of God's name, which of course is a dreadful thing. So in his case, that was his extenuating circumstance. It wasn't a matter of him being taken advantage of. He was an adult, he was a man, but it was a similar
Right.
circumstance in terms of the prohibition of suicide.
Right. And even today, people who have mental illness, bipolar disorder, excessive depression, things like that, they're also not held accountable either. And they'll be buried in the same cemetery as everybody else. Right. So.
Yeah, it's relatively new, only within the past
Yeah, well,
maybe 14 years.
DSM. As long as they have DSM, they can handle those things.
So you were talking about from Lorraine Altuski, about for something to be an axe murder, it's not going to be a dark.
Right.
But King David, originally when Shmuel was coming to figure out who was going to be the next king, he says, not this guy, because he said he was a redhead, and which is like supposed to be like an axe murderer.
Right. Yeah. Well, Moses too, right? The Midrash explains about Moses. He also had terrible traits. He was a woman, by his nature, he was a womanizer, he was a thief, he was all these things, but he turned all these traits around. Moshe Rabbeinu. Midrash says.
Really?
I know it's there, okay? I went to the book twice, it's there for sure.
Not my measure.
Right? But he had terrible traits, but he used those traits for good. So of course, in my lecture yesterday, which you weren't here, you missed a great lecture, was about King David. He was phenomenal.
Right,
So you can't do it, but not necessarily should we as people expect that of other people. Right?
Right, I understand.
Right.
But Shmuel did not expect action. He said,
Correct. Alrighty? My moose awaits. Good?
I read, because he had a big
Yep.
one side of his
Could be, right.
that is what.
Right. It wasn't mentioned in the article. That exactly. I heard that.
So any
But I'm not